Hello, I'm Bob Bayer and welcome to my video channel. This is on one of the great disasters I cover in my Great Disasters books. Why did Custer lead the 7th Cavalry into a massacre? Not just as much why as how. Little Bighorn always fascinated me. Actually, my wife and I, the first vacation we ever took, we drove out to Little Bighorn. We were both very fascinated by it, had read all the books. I cover catastrophes, and I have what I call the rule of 7. We'd watched a whole bunch of videos on airplane crashes, and my ex-wife used to be a maintenance test pilot, and I learned a lot about it. And what I started to realize was every catastrophe has 7 events. 6 cascade events leading up to the 7th event, the final event, the catastrophe. And at least one of the cascades event is human error. So therefore, we can prevent most catastrophes. So we're going to talk about how this happened at Little Bighorn. Good old Custer, not enough Indians in the world to defeat the 7th Cavalry. Yeah, famous last words. The fact of the situation: 25 June 1876, 5 of the 12 companies of the U.S. 7th Cavalry and the Custer were annihilated by a combined force of Lakota Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, Arapaho, Native Americans under the leadership of Crazy Horse and Gall. Here's the timeline: 1861, Custer graduates West Point, last in his class. 27 November 1868, the Battle of the Washita River. 2 August 1874, Custer reports finding gold right from the grassroots in the Black Hills. Now drilling down, 25 June 1876, 10:50 a.m., Custer decides to attack the encampment on the Little Bighorn River. 12:12, he first divide of his command as he sends Benteen's column off. Second, he breaks off Reno later on. Reno was the first one to make contact. They get overwhelmed. They retreat into the trees along the Little Bighorn River. Custer did not ride to help and relieve Reno. He still went around to the right flank. His companies advanced down towards Medicine Tail Coulee, and then by 5 p.m. we hear the last of the firing from Custer's position. Cascade 1, the first thing that goes wrong, happened well before Little Bighorn. Custer's background shows a leader big on ego, bravery, and foolishness. He was last in his class at West Point, which is not good. Court-martialed at West Point right after graduation. He became a general at 23. The 7th Cavalry was actually the smallest unit he ever commanded. His unit in the Civil War, the Michigan Cavalry, had one of the highest percentage of casualties. He himself went AWOL in 1867, yet he summarily executed soldiers who went AWOL. What does that tell you about his leadership? In 1868, when he attacked Black Kettle's village, he actually ran away and left part of his command there, and they were massacred. Lesson from that: the best predicator of future behavior is past behavior, and good luck can have disastrous consequences. Custer started believing that he was special. He was actually more lucky than talented. Cascade 2, he not only believed himself greater than his situation was in, he was always seeking greater position. He always filtered his actions through the narcissistic lens of, how does this benefit me? 1876 was the centennial. They were holding the convention in St. Louis. He was in the West. There was a lot of speculation that he wanted a big victory before the convention to enhance his political prestige. The human ego can believe it's stronger than any situation it's in, but nature, other people, and technology often don't agree. Ambition does blind people. Cascade 3. Custer's troops were poorly trained and reacted badly under stress. The U.S. Army in the 1870s was a mess. Very few of the enlisted soldiers had Civil War experience. A lot of the officers did, and a lot of the officers were bitter about it because they'd all been reduced in rank after the war. As we learned in Ranger School and Special Forces School, all military training is designed to teach you to react in an unnatural situation. Okay, if you have poorly trained troops, they're not going to react well in an ambush. Cascade 4, the infamous turning down of the Gatling guns. He had a disdain for new technology. I can understand why he did that. He felt that he would slow him down, taking the guns along with him. He wanted to move fast. The military is always leery of new technology. But you blame Custer. World War I generals still weren't ready for the machine gun. They were ordering frontal charges like they were still firing muskets. Technology is a double-edged sword. We can invite disaster by adopting new technology. I show examples of that in my disasters book. But also, if we don't adopt it, we can invite disaster. The military is always prepared to fight in the last war, not the next war. Fifth cascade, lack of an area study and understanding of the environment. And forgetting recent history. I never really understood about Little Bighorn until I went there. The minute I got out of the car there and looked around, I went, I see what happened now. Okay, the terrain dictated everything there. You could hide entire armies in that terrain. Even though it looks wide open, it's not. An area study is, I have a whole workbook on that. I think it's vital for any venture. In Special Forces, before we deployed, we did an area study where we were going to. We're getting ready to buy a house. We're going to do an area study where the house is. Okay, 10 years before Little Bighorn, Crazy Horse was part of the Native American force that massacred Fetterman and 69 soldiers at Fort Kearny. That's another disaster I cover in a disaster book. I've walked that terrain from where Fort Kearny was up to where he went beyond the trail, Ridgeline Trail. That was a really bad disaster. At the end, they believed that Fetterman and one of his officers committed mutual suicide rather than be captured. An area study is critical to any situation. It's one of the tenets of Special Forces. I mean, it's like Custer totally forgot what happened to Fetterman when he went and did that. There is the terrain of Little Bighorn. You know, it looks open down to that tree line there where the river is. It's not. I mean, there's coulees and gullies and all sorts of places where you can hide. Also, people don't think about this, but a rifle is a direct fire weapon. Bows and arrows are indirect fire weapons. In this type of terrain, indirect fire has an advantage. The infamous, everybody knows about this, divided his command. Everybody debates why he did this. There was animosity between him and his subordinates officers, Reno and Benteen. And really, only 5 of the 12 companies got massacred. And the ones he chose to come with him were people in his family. So there was a lot of internal politicking going on in the 7th Cav. There's a rough drawing of what happened. Bottom line, all 5 companies and every man under Custer's direct command died. Despite the warning of his scouts, the objections of some of his officers, he rode into the valley to Little Bighorn convinced he was heading to victory. And it led to his doom and 267 others. An organization needs cascade stops. This is especially hard in the military. Somebody could put the brakes on a really bad plan. You know, I wrote about this in one of my books. I'll show you in a second. But, you know, when the scouts start doing their death chant, you kind of have to sit there and think, well, maybe this might not be good. Benteen disagreed with him, so he was the first one sent off. On his last ride, he took yes men, his family members, and those commanders who were his supporters. This is a Native American drawing of the massacre. I actually write about the disaster in this book, Assault on Atlantis. How do you prevent disasters like this? I cover this in detail in my area study workbook and my leadership books. Have a special ops and preparation mindset. Focus on the big picture. You need both big picture, detailed thinkers. Area study, Carver, I describe a 10th man. After action reviews, the military is big on that. Write and use standing operating procedures. I do consulting based on catastrophes. Also, I do area studies for people. Go to my website. This is how to get access to all the information. Here are my books. This is from the Great Green Beret Guide to Great Disasters. You can see them all listed there. Little Bighorn, Fetterman, Titanic, a whole bunch of them. They all have 6 cascade events, and I describe them. This is my background. I appreciate you listening to this. Stay safe out there, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel. All the best.